Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for Scorpio moons, or if you just have Scorpio anywhere in your chart and you're wanting to work with and balance feminine energies within yourself, then this reading is for you. I've already pulled your card, Scorpio, and your reading today is absolutely gorgeous, and it feels very big. And these kind of messages, like the message was very clear coming out. And so I feel like Scorpio, there's a very sort of important alignment of events that is happening for you in this time. So I'm going to start with the bottom of the deck. You have Clarity, Mountain, and the Ace of Emotions. So this Ace of Emotions I normally see as being like coming up for air, like that sort of big gulp of air. But in your reading today, it's actually feeling kind of switched, because for you, there's a lot of this sort of like desert energy, which I will get into. So it's almost like coming out of the desert and then drinking a whole bunch of water. Like if you've been like really thirsty, and then just that sort of like cold, quenching like glass of water. That's sort of what this is feeling like. And it's bringing clarity, because I feel like you've been in this sort of energy of solitude, especially with these ones here, because of course Scorpio is a very sort of like deep diving energy, and I feel like there is an aspect of like coming up for air, but you have here, so I will get into that, but you have here the animal, the healer, and the shaman, which is so interesting, because this is all that sort of like deep diving, right? Where I feel like Scorpio, you're healing some aspect of like your past is kind of how this is coming through. There's a lot of things here in your current energy, so I'll get back to these. These will sort of pop up. This is just sort of an overall energy to keep in mind. But your first card that came out for your current energy was the Kairos card, which I absolutely love, because if you look at these two cards together, right? I feel like this is the aspect of yourself with the animal that you were healing, because I often sort of get this sort of like caged animal feeling with this card, right? Like an aspect of yourself that perhaps reacts instinctively to threat or danger. But with the Kairos card coming out and all of this sort of healing shaman energy, it feels like, Scorpio, you are almost like time traveling to the past, to your past perhaps, and healing some aspect of this animal, whatever that means to you. Today is coming through with almost like an instinctual, reflexive kind of response perhaps, and almost like bringing it back up from the surface, and or to the surface, I should say, and it's so incredible. So I will come back to this Kairos card, because it's interesting because this card talks about time and cycles of time. So yesterday I started watching this show called Travelers, which is it's like a sci-fi show where people from the future project their consciousness into the past and use sort of like past bodies, like people, as hosts. And the reason why they can do that is because they're essentially, those people were sort of set to die at a certain time and place, and so the future consciousnesses come back into the host body at the moment of death and sort of saves that person from dying. But in a sense, that person has died, because their bodies are now being inhabited in a sense by host bodies. Anyway, or host consciousnesses. It doesn't matter. What this is talking about is, with this Kairos card, I feel like what this is saying is, for your current energy, is that you are somehow like projecting your own consciousness into your own past, right? To sort of uncover or bring back some sort of knowledge is kind of how this is feeling. You're bringing back some sort of knowledge that is changing or shaping your future is kind of how this is feeling. So here you have the eternal child, which is why I'm saying that it may be sort of like going back into your past, as well as with the healer and the shaman, because whenever the eternal child comes out, I always think of like the eternal child, right? The thing about ourselves that is this sort of endless kind of fountain of joy, right? There's that aspect. And what's so interesting here is that it came out with the crone. So the child, which is the beginning, and the crone, which is kind of like the ending. But what is so interesting about this crone is that it's holding the bird, right? Holding the animal. So I feel like it's like going into your past and pulling up this sort of animal into your present, right? This knowledge, this wisdom, and it's somehow allowing you to shape or change your future, which is such an incredible message. Okay, and then what else is amazing about this top row here is that you have the desert and the fault line. So I'm actually seeing like this hand here coming up out of the sand, because with the desert, because you also have the desert in the elemental deck that I'm using. So you have the desert twice. This one says solitariness, which is sort of emphasizing to me that this is a solitary journey, that it's kind of like, I don't feel like you are, well, perhaps you with the assistance of somebody, but it feels more like you're doing this to yourself, right? Like you're healing yourself is what I mean to say. But what this desert imagery was coming through was like the sands of time. There's this movie called Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. I don't feel that movie's related to your reading at all, or the story of it. It just has a cool title. So I feel like for here, it was talking about the sands of time. And this hand was almost like, oh, well, that's interesting. Now it's feeling like it's like coming out of the surface almost to like grab you, is kind of how this is feeling, right? Like, which I will get into with the fault line as well. It's kind of like the ground is not stable with the sand, right? Like this card came out in yesterday's reading as well. It's sort of like, well, now that's interesting. I'm just thinking about yesterday's reading it was for Cancer Sun, so I will post it above just in case it's relevant to you, where it was talking about somebody, like the Cancer was saying something that revealed sort of a fault line that the other person was sort of sitting on. So it maybe you're dealing with a Cancer is kind of how this is feeling with, where somebody has said something to you perhaps that revealed that you were standing on this fault line in some way. That's interesting. So that may be relevant to you or not, but I'm just going to keep going. Those cards will come back. But because you have here the Muse of Emotions. So this card to me talks about sort of you and another person, which is why the Cancer reading is coming up, sort of back to back and supporting one another, right? So it could be like a friend or something. But then you have this Tower moment, which is actually, I'm seeing this as like the underground, something underground, almost like coming up to the surface to like pull you down is kind of how this is feeling, because the next card here is the Moon. So this being your current energy, I feel like you're in this already. I'm not, if you're not in this, then it's not your reading, right? Like I'm not predicting this is like this is already happening for you right now, Scorpio, if this is for you. So it's kind of like there's this energy, the Tower moment, something that you can't ignore, whether or not somebody else said it to you or something like that, that pulled you into this solitary desert energy. And what's interesting here is that before this desert card, right? It came out like this on my table. Is that right? Okay, anyways, or this way. So the beginning's east, and then the solitary desert, which is interesting. So it's like there was something that initiated this journey being represented by the Tower moment, and perhaps some person in your life that you are gaining, like who, like a best friend or something like that is kind of how I see this energy. Somebody that you care about and cares about you, and that you find sort of like emotional resonance with. Perhaps there was sort of a separation is kind of how this is feeling with the Tower and the Moon energy, which is so incredible. And what I was seeing with this Moon, right, with the sort of these two figures being back to back, it's now like whatever this Tower moment was, your back is now exposed, right? This person is no longer sort of there to support you. So whatever it was that happened there, caused a separation of some sort. And then here, what's so amazing is that you have this magnetism attraction card, which is the eternal child, right? This is the child sort of experiencing whatever that, so it could be that whatever this moment was, like, pulled you into the past to discover why, like, what happened. But it feels much more like very, very past, like to your childhood, because there may be something there about, like, somehow these Tower moments are connected, right? Somehow the Tower moment and this moment in the past that you're going to are connected in some way. Okay, but what's incredible here is that, because I feel like you, Scorpio, being sort of like a sign that's ruled by Pluto and Mars, you of all the signs are the most comfortable in this, right? It's like, of course there is discomfort, but it's like you're kind of, I feel like there was sort of an understanding that whatever this Tower moment was, it was to sort of serve some sort of purpose or gain some sort of clarity or understanding. And I feel like you were coming out of that energy now is kind of what the next few cards are showing. So you had the Moon, and then you have the Lovers card. And this one has been coming through recently as being sort of like a way station, right? Like an airport or a bus stop or like a carpool parking lot, a place of transition where you meet up with or get on, like it's a place where you go through in order to get to the next part of your journey is kind of how this Lovers energy has been coming through. So it's like passing through this way station, which could have to do with like the Moon. Now it's also coming through with like, in the very last Harry Potter book, Harry goes into, like, when he in quotation marks dies, he gets killed, goes into sort of an aspect of his subconscious where he meets Dumbledore in King's Cross Station, right? It's a way station. And in that sort of subconscious mind kind of like area, he learns truths, right? He learns truths. He also sees some aspect of Voldemort that was living within himself. Anyway, so that's what this is talking about. There's some aspect of like being in sort of like this, almost like a suspended reality kind of energy, like projecting your consciousness into your past through this sort of like way station in order to understand some sort of truth. And what that's allowing you to do is getting this, the Hanged Man, which talks about a new perspective, of course, and also the Ace of Materials. But what's so interesting about this crone, right? It's like there was some aspect of like the ground that you're on, which talks about like your foundation, your sense of safety, all of that, like perhaps like root chakra related. There could be that aspect as well. I just want to put this card here because look at the colors of that, and with like the 3 snakes and the 3 sort of pyramids. Anyways, so there was some aspect that was needing to be seen by you of your foundation. And what's happening here is that it's like your feet are like lifting above the ground, right? So what was coming through with this message is kind of like the ground needed to disappear in order for you to realize that you could fly, is kind of how this energy is coming through, right? It's kind of just like wherever you were, Scorpio, there was some element there of like of lack, I want to say, with the desert, because I always see that as like an environment that doesn't have enough resources, but for some reason you were staying there, right? There wasn't a lot of movement, is kind of how I'm seeing this solitariness desert, where it's like you were content to stay in this energy with the swing, right? Like you were staying here even if it wasn't sort of beneficial to you. And then what this is showing me is that like this swing almost being like flipped on its head in some way. And because of that sort of new perspective that you're getting, it's allowing you to move forward with the Ace of Pentacles, go on some sort of new adventure is what this is talking about to me, which is so incredible. Okay, Scorpio, so I'm going to move to what's something that you need to know about the situation. So I pulled so many cards and I feel like I'm going to run out of time, but we're just going to keep going. So we have here the Judge, and that came out with the Motion Air card. And I feel like there's some aspect here of like almost being like, this is the external energy of whatever it was that sort of caused this tower moment, is kind of how it's feeling with all this sort of motion air, because it's feeling like an external energy. And for some reason today, these were looking like zombie horses. For some reason, it has to do with this movie I watched that had a scene like this. Zombie horses, so something from the past that would not die, perhaps an energy that would not die, but is somehow, and especially because it's coming through the desert, right? Not a lot of resources. It's like that energy, this energy is already sort of dead and gone, is kind of how this is feeling, but perhaps because there was like sand covering it, right? I'm just thinking of like all of these sort of like archaeological digs where there's so much like covered by sand that you have to like take the sand out. You have to like remove the sand with this fault line in order to actually get to the structure beneath it. And I feel like this air motion card is kind of like the air almost like blowing away all the sand. And in doing that, it's also sort of like flipping your swing upside down, right? That's incredible. Okay, and then here you have the Emperor and the Ignition Fire, which is so interesting. The Ignition Fire, because what this is saying to me is that once all that sort of sand is blown away, you have this fire energy that's almost like reignited in you, right? There's some aspect here of like, because it kind of feels like something that was like, well, sand absolutely kind of snuffs out fire, right? So there's some aspect of like your perhaps creativity or motivation or passion or whatever it is that you associate fire with that had been snuffed out by the desert, by all of the sand, something that was snuffed out through time. And it's kind of like whatever this tower moment is that's coming in, it's blowing away all of the sand, it's flipping you on your head and forcing you to get a new perspective in order to relight whatever this fire energy is that was snuffed out. And then now it's kind of like you're absolutely sort of like coming up out of this as the Emperor, which is so incredible because it's like your feet, it's like this is the flying aspect now, right? It's like the ground beneath you disappeared, but unbeknownst to you, Scorpio, you have wings, and so now you're sort of flying is kind of how this is feeling, which is so incredible. Okay, and then the next card to come out, well, here you have the Creator, which is talking about all of this sort of creativity energy for sure. But I feel like it's also talking about, because the next card you have out here is the water card. So I just want to look, like if you just look at this combination of cards, you have air, fire, and water, which are like 3 out of the 4 elements, which is so incredible to me. But what I'm actually getting for this Scorpio is that this may actually be somebody else. What's missing here is earth, right? That's what the thing is. The sand earth here is not fertile, right? The ground is arid. There's no sort of growth in whatever this earth element is for you, which is what is being sort of restored. But I feel like in order for that to happen, because the earth aspect is not in your reading today, it's telling me that that's the area that was needing to be restored in some way. But in order to get there, it's like you had to first clear out all of this sort of old earth energy, reignite the flame, and then, but this is your energy today. And I feel like for this next aspect of what you need to know, because you have here the 2 of inspiration, which is talking about looking ahead, that there's somebody that you're going to encounter. And it could even be coming back together with whoever that Muse of Emotions was in the beginning. I can't find the card now. Oh, there it is. Okay. So it could be, it could be 2 ways. So there may be sort of this coming back together with this Muse of Emotions, whoever they are to you, like a friend or significant other, that perhaps there was a separation or disagreement. But it could also be, because it's looking ahead, it could also be a new person, depending on your situation. I feel like that's going to be specific to your situation, whatever it is. And what's incredible here is that in between the creation, the water and the fire is this magic card. If you just look at this, the colors of it, right? The red and blue making this like purple. And today this was looking like the 2 hands coming together, which is so incredible, because it's kind of like back to back, right? You were back to back, you were supporting one another, perhaps in some way. This could also be some sort of like element of like codependency. I'm just going to put that out there because that's sort of what's coming through. But now sort of coming back together with your hands instead of back to back. And so I feel like there's a significance, a change in the dynamic in the way that you are coming back together, because it's like you're perhaps coming back together to create something. And also because it's coming through with this energy of opposites, right? It's like fire and water being opposite. No, not opposite. Being complementary energies, right? You do need both of these things in order to create, is kind of how this is feeling. And so I feel like, and you also have here the agape, which is talking about alignment today, but agape also represents unconditional love, right? So there is that energy between you. And now I'm just seeing all this like fire and water, all of this fire and water coming together with unconditional love to create some sort of magic. Okay, I'm going to end the reading there. I have other cards, but I'm going to go to the extended to explain those. The link for that's in the description box below. I do have other videos if you're interested in checking those out. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I will see you in the next one.